Welcome to the Taos Institute's Relational Research Network video series. In this series, we explore research from a relational perspective. We hear from people working with a relational research process and learn about related values, concepts, and practices. To start, here are some of our ideas. Research from a relational perspective embodies a philosophical and co-creative stance. It is thus not a method, per se, but rather a collaborative way of being. Engaging from this perspective entails an ethical responsiveness to a focus of inquiry. Recognizing that reality is created through language and social structures means it can also be recreated. Relational research is a process that is attentive to broader relations and interactions. The purpose is to expand possibilities and co-create transformative potentials. We hope you enjoy the series and invite you to join in the conversation. Yochay Nadan and Monica Sesma, a conversation. Social constructionist and relational approach to the study of children's risk and protection. Yochay Nadan works at the School of Social Work and Social Welfare at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in Israel. Yochay focuses on cultural and cross-cultural aspects of research, direct practice and training, cultural aspects of children in at-risk situations, including abuse and neglect, and clinical social work with couples and families. His studies aim to challenge widely held Western perspectives regarding the definition, etiology, consequences, prevention, and treatment of child abuse and neglect. He wants to better understand the socially constructed nature of concepts such as risk, protection, and well-being for children and families from diverse cultural and professional contexts.
Hi, Yochay, how are you?
Good, thank you, Monica. Thanks for inviting me. How are you?
Good, thank you. I am really excited to have this conversation about relational research. So thank you for accepting our invitation. And so Yochay, before we start talking about relational research, is okay if I invite you to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. So I am a social worker. I'm a social work researcher, and I'm a family therapist and supervisor. And I'm from Israel. I live in Tel Aviv, and I work in Jerusalem at the Hebrew University at the School of Social Work. And actually, I've been recently arrived to Montreal for my sabbatical at McGill University, where I'm affiliated with the Division of Social and Transcultural Psychiatry. And I'm here with my family, with my partner and son. And mostly I'm interested in issues of culture and context and how these intersect with social work practice, social work education and research, as well as in family therapy.
Oh, that's great, and Yochay. So one of the reasons, and I'm so happy that you are in your sabbatical, and so we have the opportunity to have this conversation as well. So you are doing a good use of your sabbatical by sharing your wisdom with us. But one of the reasons why we invited you is because, and the way you use social constructionist ideas and relational ideas into your projects, research projects, are very interesting to us. So what about if we start by me asking you about how do you understand relational research and how you use this in your projects?
Okay, so what I had in mind, so maybe I will take one project that we worked on like for the past 5 years, and I'll talk a little bit about the project, and then I'll try to explain and rethink together with you how constructionist and relational ideas are intertwined with the project. Would this be a good map for our conversation?
Yes, that sounds fantastic. Please
Okay.
share with us.
Okay, so our last research project that was just recently published in an edited book with the title Context Informed Perspectives on Child Risk and Protection in Israel, that was co-edited by me and Professor Dorit Striel, and was published at the Springer Child Maltreatment Series. And this book actually summarizes a large-scale qualitative research project that explored how different communities in Israel construct and think about and experience issues of risk and protection of children. So we looked into 8 different communities, among them the Palestinian in East Jerusalem, ultra-Orthodox, Bedouin, immigrants from different countries, from the former Soviet Union, from Ethiopia, from France, and others. And we actually wanted to learn how these constructs of risk and protection is constructed and thought of and experienced. But we also wanted to learn how professionals, and specifically social workers and child protection officers who work with these very same communities, how do they think about these constructs? And just as a context, actually the study took place in Nevet, which is a greenhouse of context-informed research and training. Nevet in Hebrew, the word Nevet means sprout, and this is an interdisciplinary and multicultural research and training venue. And we call it a greenhouse because it was made to empower young academics and professionals of diverse backgrounds. So we develop knowledge and promote policy that enhances this culture and context-informed perspective for professional agencies working in different areas. And this project, although Dorit and I edited the book, but it was an outcome of a large group of fabulous PhD students and master students and other faculty members who work with us. And it was also funded, luckily, by the Israeli Science Foundation. So basically, I think this project was initiated because we are very, very concerned, a group of people that were very concerned about what's going on in Israel social services and child protection. We saw, and this is not only in Israel, we see the same phenomenon in other Western countries. We saw overrepresentation of children of minority groups in the system. We saw a lot of misunderstanding and disagreements between professionals and with families and parents, especially of minority groups, about how to work together. What does risk mean? What does child protection mean? Therefore, there were a lot of detachment and also even hostility, between. So the services didn't deliver what they're supposed to deliver to these communities, and the parents felt they not only that the services are not, they cannot trust the services, but that the services are putting their children at risk. So those very services that were supposed to protect the kids were perceived by the families as, putting the children at risk. And lastly, I think we're also very concerned because we saw a lot of professional burnout of those working in child protection, especially with minority groups, and fast turnover of professionals in those services. So we basically said something is really very wrong here. We need to explore all these risk business or risk discourse. And I think this is where we come into social construction.
Yeah, no, and that is one of the things I noticed in this research that you are mentioning, and I saw the publication, and I thought how magical was that you focus on people that all of them are involved in how risk is addressed and protection of these children in this area or this region, but also many of the people that were your collaborators in this research might hold like different values, different perspectives, sometimes their meanings around or discourses about risk and protection might be like radically different, right? And still you manage in a way that you collected all the wisdoms and you relate with all of them, that they accepted to participate. So how you and your team did that, like how you focus on the relationship in a way that everybody was open to get involved in the project and participate, to try to find better ways to talk about risk and address protection.
Yeah. So I think the first point, and this is for us an ethical sense, is about the composition of the research group. So unlike, each one of us has different positionalities and being more privileged or more oppressed and, intersection and so on. But what we had, uh, uh, what was very, very important to us, and this is the spirit of Nevet, is to have people who are insiders from the communities, masters and PhD students and professors at the universities that share some background, language, or other commonalities and positionalities with the groups under study. And for me, I would say, I perceive it even unethical to have research on specific groups coming from the outside and doing my bringing my questionnaire or my quantitative tools and to do a study about the community. So the idea was to do the study with the community. And this unique composition of the research group that actually included experts in, some of them were experts in qualitative analysis, some of them were practitioners in child welfare and child protection, some were, as I said before, part of or belong to the different group under studies, actually provided multiple perspectives, both, of course, to analyze the data, debating, discussing differences, but also to access communities and to have this trust and willingness of people to help, because many of our communities believe that taking part in this research is a way of being active for their community. So it's a matter of protecting the kids of their communities. That was a motivation to collaborate with us.
Yeah.
I can give one example.
Yeah, please.
We both know Netanel Gemara, who is a PhD student of us. He's an ultra-Orthodox person himself. And he explored in his PhD that was part of the project, he actually explored how ultra-Orthodox parents and professionals construct risk for children in their community. And I remember one interview transcript that I worked on. I analyzed it. And it was a group interview with children 12 to 14, if I'm not mistaken. And these ultra-Orthodox children talked again and again about like they answered the question of what put children at risk and so on. And they mentioned people who are not Jewish who might come and kidnap children in the community. And by the way, child kidnapping is not a theme in Israel. It's not something you know on the news, or it's not a topic so much. And I read the transcript, and I'm not part of the community, and I had this nice idea. I thought, it's a segregated community, so they are talking about outsiders, and I had this interpretation, fabulous interpretation of other processes of othering as coming to protect the communities and so on. And That was it. And then Nathaniel read the same transcript and he just wrote at the side pedophiles. And I was like, what? What do you mean by pedophile? And he said, of course, in the community, when adults want to speak about child sexual offenders, they like the key term is child kidnappers. So, and then a dialogue started between Nathaniel and myself, and later on in the group, you know, about these two very different interpretations. You know, I believe both of them has truth in them, but they are very different. So I think these anecdotes kind of explain something about the spirit of our work.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful example. You made me think and of some of the core values of social construction and relational work, right? Like you mentioned, for example, and all you, your team, and your participants, this was not a research about them, right? It was not about a research about how the community is protecting the children. It was a community with them. The witness
Right.
was very important to involve them and to understand their local meaning and how they make sense of these experiences and what was their ideas about how to protect. And you mentioned many things that I found like also within our core values, our social constructionist practitioners, like for example, and the transparency about what is the goal of this, including them, and how you negotiating these ethical positions. And also, of course, you mentioned trust, like building trust, like which means that the relationship was very important and in building this with the community in order to do something together, right? So it was not this distinction like the researchers and the community, but everybody concerned about the safety of these children. And you mentioned also like one of the key components was that everybody was highly interested in protecting the children in the community, right? So at
Right.
what point this common interest in protecting the children kind of and faded away, like who is community researcher, a student, PhD, because everybody was focused on the children. That is fantastic. What other and values did you see infused in your project? And mhm.
So I think one, going back to the relationship with the community, so I think one of the values that the research doesn't end, or the relationship with the communities do not end when we ending data collection, which this is the case in most research, right? So, um, so how we come back to the communities, how we share with them our findings, our interpretation, and get feedback from the participants about our interpretation. And more than that, how we are listening very carefully to the community's ideas about what to do with the findings or with the outcome. And this goes a little bit with the direction of participatory action research, right? So the project is, with the participants, and it might lead to an action. So it's not only the aim is not only to publish papers and books. This is good, but it's not enough. What impact does it have? So I would like to tell about two small anecdotes about that. So first, um, the communities that we worked with were very, very interested that we will share our findings with the ministry, Ministry of Welfare, and with the people in charge. So for example, when we work with the ultra-Orthodox, one of the main findings that, we interviewed them about what is risk for children, both parents and children and even very young children. And the first thing that they all talked about was spiritual risk. And this is not a thing that was found in the literature before. And what does spiritual mean in the eyes of the community? So the level, what is risky for kids in the community, in the eyes especially of parents, that the level of spirituality of the children will decline. And if the level of spirituality of the children, we have a paper on that, and if the level of spirituality is declining, then the child is very much in danger. So for the community, spiritual risk was the most important thing. When we interviewed social workers and child protection officers who work with these very same communities, spiritual risk was not mentioned, unless these professionals were also themselves part of the community, right? So how can we think about it? What should we do? So we have different concepts. So we started giving talks about spiritual risk, bringing this concept into the services, into child protection. And it started to move, so it's kind of bringing the voice of the community into the services, and then it continues. Another a different point of view or a different example would be the work that was done with the Bedouin community. The Bedouin Arab who lives in the Negev or the Nakab in Arabic, in the desert, in the south part of Israel. It's an indigenous, semi-nomadic, traditional population. I will not talk a lot about this population, but I will only say about one of our colleagues, Dr. Ibtissam Mar Isarwan, who focused in her research on this community. And Ibtissam actually focused on a specific group within the Bedouin population, on the unrecognized villages. What do I mean by unrecognized? So because they are nomadic, so they moved from here to there, and when the state was established, the state of Israel didn't recognize them as villages of the state. So they really suffer, from institutional oppression, ongoing discrimination, very poor infrastructure. Most of them don't have electricity and running water, not to talk about daycares and access to healthcare, right? So Ibtissam actually, and she published about it very recently in a fabulous paper in the British Journal of Social Work about this process that I will try to just talk very briefly. So when she came back to the mothers who she interviewed about risk and protection with their young children, kind of member checking, and they had a focus group interview, and some of the women who were interviewed actually kind of wanted to talk more about how they felt that the state neglected. So, and they talked about that they must find more solution of themselves because they cannot trust the state. So the mother asked Ibtissam, the researcher, to organize a workshop for them to make toys out of disposable materials they can use to occupy young children in the community and prevent them from wandering outside. Okay, and after the workshop, they initiated, this is unbelievable, they initiated a daycare facility that they called El Amal, in English, the hope. And Ibtissam, this amazing researcher, she assisted them with gathering, she is in contact with them 5 years after the study has ended. And they opened a daycare, and later on they were invited to the university to teach our students about the way they did this amazing process, right? And then later on they got support from some NGOs and so on. So I think this one of the values of, participatory action research, that the study doesn't end when we end the data collection, and this connection between research and the life of the people.
I think no, those two examples I think are fantastic in the sense and that you build these relationships, but not only to have advantage of them, like the relationship continues, and also these things are not only to inform in papers, these things are to take concrete actions to benefit the community based on what they work, they share their wisdom, their knowledge, which is also fantastic. And at the end, you mentioned something that also was very intriguing to me, and maybe we will not have the time today to talk about that, but you also mentioned how being in relationship and understanding the struggles, the community, the local struggles, also bring other things that are more like political or more structural issues, right? And how you gather all of them to trouble those notions or those structural issues and try to address them to create a change and for everybody, right? And how you are having conversations with them and interacting with them, you are already creating those futures, right? Like just by being in these conversations with them. And I found that very interesting, right? Like you were talking about positionality, about these political issues, and about raising and raising this awareness and try to address something and maintaining the relationship with them. That's fantastic. So, Yochay, and I know that you in the beginning mentioned one article that and was one of your examples. Would you mind if I ask you again, Yochay, if you can't repeat what is that article that you were talking about, in case the people that are seeing these conversations would like to know more?
The paper of spiritual risk, right?
Yeah.
So spiritual risk, I think that the term spiritual risk is in the title, and it was published in the British Journal of Social Work as well. Yes.
Thank you so much. So with this, we will end our conversation today with Yochay, and we will be very happy to invite him in the future to talk more about his research. Thank you, Yochay.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thanks for everyone. And
Thank you.
I hope for future opportunities. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you to Yochay Nadan and Monica Sesma. More about Yochay at www.tausinstitute.net/Yochay-Nadan. Please join in the conversation. What captured your attention in this video? How do you think these ideas reflect a relational orientation to research? Please leave a comment on this YouTube page or join our community at www.tausinstitute.net/relational-research-network. There you can find a lot more information and resources. We thank the Relational Research Network leadership team for the vision and dedication to making this video series come to life.